And okay, now we're recording. All right, so this is Frederick Keniston from Axiom, and this training is for Howard R. Green Company on Title Block Manager. And what you're seeing on the screen right now is MicroStation V8i Select Series 4, and Title Block Manager runs the version I'm showing you in all V8 versions up to the current V8i Select Series version. And when you install one or more Axiom programs, you get this Axiom menu selection here off your main MicroStation menu. And when you click that, the first section you see is our toolkit for V8, which is these 16 programs. And then in the other product area is Title Block Manager. In MicroStation, the Title Block Manager is two programs, Title Block Administrator and Title Block Client. I'm going to concentrate on Title Block Administrator. We do have an AutoCAD version of the same program, but it's a lot simpler for us to deal with title block data there. So we don't have two programs. It's just one program there in AutoCAD, but similar functionality. So when I click on Administrator, what this tool does as far as the main actions, when you see here in the action area, is to update a database from selected design files, and that will push data out, copies of it from the design files that you have, into a spreadsheet, which you would name here. It's just a database. It could either be a spreadsheet or a Microsoft Access database, either way. And then after the data is copied out to that file, you can then open it, edit the data directly to handle things like resequencing sheets, updating sheet totals, updating any other data that you need or want to update in your title blocks, and then reverse the program action to say update the selected design files from the database. Now, when I go into the settings, just to give you kind of a little bit overview, change settings. In MicroStation for many, many years, title blocks have been in a couple different formats. One is, or one of the first ones was simple text elements, which is this third one here. You've also used regular cells for many, many years. And then in V8, they came up with shared cell, which is similar to a block in AutoCAD, where you have a block definition and then areas in the drawing file where the block elements are displayed. That's what a shared cell is in MicroStation, or a rough equivalent. And then you've also had tags, which in AutoCAD, you will have a block with like tags and values. And tags or tag sets in MicroStation are similar to that sort of setup. Now, of these four, the easiest to work with is tags. And the reason for that is they don't require any setup related to Title Block Manager being able to recognize the data that you're trying to extract copies out of, the design files, out to the spreadsheet. All you have to do is turn on this option. This option is off by default for tags, but you just turn it on. And then you can run the update the database from selected design files, write directly for any files that have tag sets in them for the title block data, but it doesn't have to be isolated to tag sets for just title block data. It could be any tag sets, as a matter of fact. And then once the data is out there, you can then update it just like I described before, and then push it back. Now, these other three formats, and I will go into this in just a little bit, it does require a little bit of setup. And all you're basically doing in the setup is saying, here's a little bit of data on how our title blocks are set up and what data we want to be able to grab from these three different forms of title blocks. And then you run a little routine to take up the rules basically that you set up for that, which I'll show you more on in a bit. And then once that's done, then you can use the normal actions to then extract copies of that data out to a spreadsheet or Microsoft Access database and then update it and push it back. So that's kind of an overview. Now, this particular title block I have just set up for, just to show you the basic operation of extracting data out, updating it, and pushing it back, is a tag-based title block. So if I use my element selection tool and put my cursor where you see it's got text here, but then here it shows you that it's a tag. So this would be called a label. This would be called the value as far as how Title Block Manager deals with things. And that would be the same if it was a shared cell, regular cell, or simple text elements. You've got a label and then a value. Now, since I don't have to do any setup for this particular title block, what I'm going to do is I've got a number of files that have the same tag-based title block in them. So I'm going to just show you how to operate this with a number of files. You click select, and then you can use this browse button or search for files or open Windows Explorer and drag and drop files into this dialog box. So I'm going to use browse here. You navigate out, you pick up the files that your sheets basically and add them to the list. Click OK. And then it just tells you how many files that you've got that you've selected. And then for the database, if you name a new file here that doesn't yet exist, what's going to happen, in fact, I'm going to do that here, is it's going to see that that file doesn't exist on disk, and it will automatically create it. And so it has a place to then push the data that comes from the title blocks. So I'm going to go ahead and say update the database from the selected design files, and it's going to create this file, this spreadsheet in this case, newly, because I know it doesn't exist on disk. So click Start, and you see it processes through the files. 4 database records were corrected, and that I happened to process 4 files, so I know that it got all the data from the 4 files that I processed. I'll close that. Now I'll click Edit Database. This will find the database and open it in its application. If it's Excel, it'll open Excel. If it's Microsoft Access, it'll open in Access. And then you'll see here, these first columns up through last file update are housekeeping information. It uses this information to keep track of what information goes with what files. After this last file update, when you start here, you can move from the right all of these other columns around if you need to, but you can't put any in between these first 6, and you can't move the position of these first 6. It'll just mess up what the program looks for or needs in order to find what data goes with what files. But after these, you can move these columns around. Now you'll also see, if I put my cursor on one row, this is the data for all of the title block information from this one file along this one row. So if I scroll or pan actually all the way to the right, you'll see at the end of it, it's got my total sheets and my sheet numbers. If I had to resequence sheets, let's say I had to insert 15 more sheets in this particular set, then these would all have to be renumbered. So I'll just enter 50 here, and then I can use the spreadsheet's own tools to increment the rest of these here. And then and let's say this is now 250 for my total sheets. So I'll just edit that and then copy that and paste that down. Let's say we also moved, and this is now 00 for our phone number. I'll edit that, copy, and paste that data, and save the file. Any other data that I needed to update, I could do so, or leave blank or blank out, or whatever the case may be. After I'm done editing, I'll close this. Now I'll go back to Title Block Manager, and I'll say update the design files from the database. So this is going to, when I process this, it's going to change this 35 figure, this 200 figure, and this phone number figure in each of the files I'm processing. So I'll click Start. And you see it handled 4 of the design files updated. And then you see in this file that is displaying, or the current active file, it did update the sheet numbers, the sheet totals, and the phone number. Now, if I want to check my work, it would, particularly if you're doing more than just a couple files, it would be a waste of time, really, for you to open each individual file and go and look at it and see what it did. So what you do is you close this and then just display the report. This report is in text form, and what it will do is this. For each of the files you processed, here's tag 0, which is the file that's active right now. It'll tell you what it changed in the title blocks. So here, The phone number, you see it changed. The total, you see it changed. And then for the specific sheet number in this file, it changed it from 35 to 50. And then when you go to tags 1, the same changes, but it was 36 to 51. So you can just check the details from this, and if you see something wrong, you can go back and debug whatever happened and then fix it as necessary. So that's the basic operation. Once you have title blocks in the form that you need, and you've told Title Block Manager how they're set up in order to get the data out, update it, and push it back. Now, that was with a tag, our tag set, and again, that's the easiest to work with. But I'm going to go into a regular cell here, or a title block that uses a regular cell. And you see this is, it just tells you that these elements are part of a cell. Now, which is going to be different than when I put my cursor over this particular value in the tag set where it tells you this is a tag. So now what we're going to do is we're going to change the action, and because I'm going to have to tell Title Block Manager, in the case of a regular cell, a shared cell, or simple text elements, how this title block is set up. I can either set up rules for all of the data if I want, or just some of the ones that I know that are going to be changed on a constant or more frequent basis. So in this case, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say upgrade existing text to Title Block Manager text. And when I do that, notice it says edit rules here, and it names something called a rule file. We're going to go through another process here to tell the program how my title blocks in this particular form, which is regular cell, are set up. And just to make sure I don't have anything odd here, I'm going to say remove Title Block Manager attributes from text elements. I can't recall if this particular file I had previously made clean. So let me just process it real quick. Fine. Okay. And nope, it was clean. Okay, good. So all that would have done is the other process here, when I say upgrade existing text to Title Block Manager text, it will add attributes to the text elements that I'm going to deal with, which I'll show you in a second, so that Title Block Manager will recognize them as text that it can then extract copies out to the database. So first we'll go edit rules. And if that file doesn't exist on disk, you tell it, yes, I want to create it. And you could name it whatever you want, really. Just the RUL extension is what it's looking for. And then it says choose editing mode. You either have a classic mode or wizard mode. Wizard mode is the easiest to work with, so that's what I'm going to concentrate on here. So I'll click continue, and then notice it changes this dialog box. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to set up something that's similar to what you have in a database processing thing. You're going to create what's called like a data dictionary. You're going to basically tell the program what are the label values and what are the value text or the values that are associated with them, and what the relationship is one of those to the other. So I'll click add, and when I do so, it changes the interface to this wizard mode, this rule wizard, and it tells you please select a label element, and the graphic shows you what it's talking about. So in this case, I'm going to go to sheet number, and I'm going to click once, and then once again to confirm that's the label I want to work with. Then after you do that, it then says please select a value element. In this case, it's going to be 25 for the value related to sheet number. So I'll click once again on that to confirm it. And then notice it makes a field name for this particular pair, this label and value pair. And it uses the exact text that was for the label. But you don't have to leave it this way. In other words, you can edit this, and I'm going to do so. I'm just going to remove the colon and the period there. And then I'll click next. And then it records the characteristics of the label value. Notice all of the text for the label that I selected, and its weight, the font, and everything else associated with it. Then I'll click next. It does the same thing for the value. Now notice the value for string is not checked. The reason for that is because this will be a variable field. It's not always going to be 25 because you're going to have differing sheet numbers. But it records all of the other data or characteristics related to that particular value. When I click next again, it then says, please fine tune the value location if needed. So what this does is this records the relationship using X and Y distance, and it was 3D, if it was 3D Z distance, between the label and the value. When I put my cursor over the design file, notice it then gives me a bounding box for, in this case, the value for the sheet number. And the reason this is here is because if sometimes that text might swim around in that area a little bit, or the numbers might be bigger, then you want to make sure that that bounding box where it's going to look for that text is big enough to care for instances like that. So I'm just going to grab this arrow and move this bounding box a bit, and then say finish. And it records all of that data where that bounding box is, so it knows exactly where to look for that sheet number data. And then this is the field that I created that has all of those characteristics associated with it that I showed you earlier as I was running through the wizard. And then I'll go File, Save, and it saves that sheet number to the rule file and all the data associated with it. I can now test the rule too. Test the rule is going to look at the current design file, and based on the data that I set up in the rule, it's going to tell me whether it found the data or not based on the characteristics that it recorded with that rule. So I click test rule. You see here for regular cell, title block 3 is what this is. Sheet number was the field name, and the data was found. It found the label, which is exactly that, and it found the label with it, which is, or the value, which is exactly that. So based on this data, I know it's going to find not only the label, but also the value associated with it for any other design file that uses this same setup for title block, the same title block cell. So I'll close this for now, and I'm going to do the same thing for the sheet totals. Now the sheet totals is going to be different here, because notice I've got the word of. I don't have anything that says total sheets or anything like that. But we can still use that because all we need for a label is just some text to anchor or orient the relationship between it and then the value data. So here's what we'll do. We'll click Add. And for the label, I'm going to go ahead and use of. I'll click once again to confirm that. And I can do the same thing for, or then I'll do the same thing for the value. I'll click once again. And then notice the field name uses the exact text of what I clicked on for the label. Now, you and I know that this is not of, it's actually just a placeholder that I use to orient where the value is, and it's actually for total sheets. So what I'm going to do is edit this field and say total sheets. And then I'm going to put of in parentheses. So that is an indicator. It's a common convention I use to indicate this is the exact text element that it's associated with it. It's for, or it's the orientation point for the value, but its text is of, but it's for total sheets. Or in fact, I should put an S here, total sheets. Then I'll click next, and then it grabs all of the characteristics for of, which is basically my orientation point for my value. And then the same thing for the value, and then I'll click next again, and it gives me the bounding box, which I'm going to stretch out a bit just to make sure in case that text swims around a little bit or has more, gets more digits added to the length. But let's say this was tens of thousands of files, then it would care for numbers that big. Click finish, and then I'll save the rule file again. And now I'll test that new rule and see what it finds. So notice it says field name, total sheets, and then it has the of in parentheses there, and it was found. And then the label is of. Again, it's just using that as an orientation point to then locate the value. And then the value it found was 144. So based on this data, I know I've set up my rule correctly in order to find the total sheets data. Now, with those two pieces of information, I'm just going to go ahead and close this rule file. And now I'm going to say upgrade existing text to title block manager text. And what it's going to do, it's going to, any files that I've got selected here that use that same form of title block, it's going to apply the rule file to then add attributes to the label and values so that later I can find the data and use it by making copies of it with the other process I showed you initially to update the database from selected design files. So I'll click Start, and notice it found files with title block elements 1, and it found 2 values, which matches what I set up in my rule file. I only have 2 that I'm looking for 2 values, and that's what it found. So click Close. Now I'll change to Update Database from Selected Design Files. What that process did is it just added attributes so that it can find and it can find 144 in this file, with it being a cell as opposed to a tag, which it doesn't need that data. It finds it automatically. So now I'll click, actually I'll change the file name here. So I've got a new file that's going to be created from my database, and I'll click Start. And it processes through this one file. It created 1 database record. Click Close, and now I'll edit my database again. And you see for this one file, it's got, again, the first 6 columns are housekeeping information, and it found the total sheets and the sheet number. So again, just like I showed you in the initial run here, I could update this information. Save the file, close it, and then when I go back, I can say update the selected design files from the database. Click Start, and there you see it updated the file. Now, that's just using sheet numbers and total sheets related to the cell that I'm using for my title block here. If there's more data that I want to be able to grab out and then be able to edit and update in the database or spreadsheet that I'm using, then all I'd have to do is go back to my upgrade existing text to title block manager text, click Edit Rules, go through the wizard mode, and let's say I wanted to do phone number or any of the other things, and then I would do the same process that I showed you related to sheet numbers and sheet totals for the other pieces of information I wanted to grab out. And again, just as a point of, just to reiterate this, if the exact text for what something is for doesn't exist in the title block, just like I use for total sheets, you can use any piece of text as the label to then orient or find a piece of or a value that you want associated with it. So it doesn't always have to be the exact name of the thing. You can use any piece of text to just orient the program so that it will find it once you have upgraded the existing text to title block manager text. So that's the basics. Any questions of anything that I've gone over so far?
Does anyone know?
Can we get this on like a PDF or anything?
Yeah, he's going to send it to us, FTP.
Awesome.
So,
Oh,
go ahead.
is there a way to make it clearer?
Oh, make it more visible? I was trying to.
It's kind of hard to find.
Yeah, we'll go over it after this, too. I think we're good, Frederick.
Okay. So I'm going to show you a couple of the things which will help you. And if I go to the Help menu here and go to Contents, this is the Title Block Administrator documentation in Windows Help form. You'll notice here under Chapter 4, it's got what's called a Quick Start. This is the basic tutorial for the program. And when I expand this, you'll see it's got 5 different tutorial steps. And it goes through a number of different things, including using the title block client to create title block cells if you need or want to do that. I'm just not concentrating on that here because most of the stuff you're going to be dealing with is going to be in Title Block Administrator. But it gives you the basics on exactly what I showed you to do in today's training as well. After the Quick Start, it's the full documentation of the program, and it covers every button, option, dialog box, setting, you name it, in the program. And then later, it also gives you some frequently asked questions. And also, if I close this, you'll see also, if you go Help About, this opens a web page that gives you the exact version of the program you're running right here. And it also gives you data on your license. This information on this left side here will be useful if you run into anything that you need support assistance from us for, because we'll be asking for some of this data. And then also you see on the side, if you do need help, it gives our phone numbers where you can call and ask for support, a link to the Axiom website, a knowledge base for technical support. You could create a new support ticket directly from here. You can also email us at support@axiomint.com. That will also automatically create a support ticket if you need help. And also if you need or want to get information on other Axiom products or pricing for upgrades or other things, you can use this email address here as well. Now, related to the quick start, I'm going to go back and go on disk here. By default, when you install the program, you're going to have under C Program Data Axiom a V8 folder. And then you'll see here it's got TB Admin and TB Client. When you go into TB Admin, under it you'll see sample files, and these are sample files that come with the program that the Quick Start Guide orients you to utilize in order to learn the basics of the program and work with it yourself. So they're always going to be in this location, so if you ever need to go find them, that's where they are. And this zip file here, I can't recall if this, I think this is used just to restore them. I may have created that myself, but one thing I commonly do if I'm going to be dealing with the sample files for any Axiom program is I'll always zip up a copy of them first before I make any changes to them. That way, if I want to go back and relearn something or retest something, then I just restore the files from the zip file. It's just a common thing that I do for testing or trying to learn something. So there's that. Also, related to the documentation, where the program is installed, which is under C Program Files x86, Axiom, V8, then here's Title Block Administrator. When I go there, you'll see these PDF files. This PDF file, tbadmin v8.pdf, is the full documentation in PDF form. It's the same documentation that I showed you in the Windows help file. In addition, the Quick Start Guide, we always separate out as well. And the Quick Start Guide, which is chapter 4, that same documentation, we just separated it out as its own PDF file here as well. So if you need or want to go look at it in PDF form, then this is where you'd find that data in PDF form. So that's all I have for the training. Chris, are there any other questions or anything else you guys want to see? Anything like that? Anything you want me to read?
No, sir. Does anybody have any questions for Frederick? No? No? Good. I think that's it.
Okay, great. So I showed you that email address earlier. I'm going to give it to you again here before I end off then. And it's the support at axiomint.com email address. And you can use that for support issues, but also if you have other things that you run into in your workflow where you want to see, hey, does Axiom have a program that would handle this, or might they consider, updating Title Log Manager to handle this scenario, or consider developing a program that would handle this particular workflow issue. Anything like that, you could use that email address for.
Okay.
So with that, I'll let you guys go for now. And like I said, Chris, once the recording has finished processing and I'm able to, I might need to update or clean up the audio just a little bit depending on how the recording sounds. And once that's all done, I'll put it on our FTP site and send you an email with a link to it so you can download it and then distribute it as you see fit.
Okay. Sounds good.
Great. All right, you guys, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate this, and I hope this was beneficial to you. And with that, I'll let you go for now.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Have a good rest of your day.
Okay, you too. Bye.